Hello and welcome, everyone. Just give us one moment to pull together our cameras, and we're going to get started with today's episode of Cooking Connected. All right, so a very warm hello and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Sajwa, and I'm here with my coworker, Jordan. All right, she's giving us a wave. Thanks, Jordan. And we are here today with Cooking Matters Minnesota and the University of Minnesota Extension. Cooking Matters Minnesota is a 6-week nutrition-based cooking class, and usually it features a nutrition educator and a chef who work together and collaborate on a recipe. And we do a recipe demonstration. We learn some awesome nutrition to go along with that recipe, and then we cook together and eat together. So it's a really fun way to connect with the community. Now, of course, we are during these times where we're trying to social distance, so our goal for today is to do the same kind of work but virtually. Before we get started with today's episode of Cooking Connected and we move forward with our recipe, I do want to give a thank you to all of those who have already participated in our surveys, who are active on our Facebook page, giving us a recipe recommendation, taking our Friday polls. We really appreciate your feedback and your engagement. And we're here to ask again if you would be willing to take this week's survey. I have the program code here. The program code for this week's episode of Cooking Connected is E097-390. And again, that's the program code for this week's episode of Cooking Connected. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Jordan. We're going to get started with our recipe today.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for that introduction, Sajwa. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. So this week we are making a new recipe for myself as well. We are making salmon pasta bake. This recipe is really nice because it incorporates a canned salmon, which is a really reasonable option, but still getting that beautiful fatty fish that we love. So have you ever tried this one, Sajwa?
You know, I haven't made this recipe specifically, but it reminds me of something like a tuna hot dish. I don't know if you guys are Midwesterners or Minnesotans, but hot dish is really popular over here, and it reminds me of a tuna hot dish. So I do again like the option of using a canned fish. I think that makes it really versatile. So if you weren't into salmon, you could substitute tuna, and I think I like that a lot about this recipe.
Absolutely, yes. So it's very similar to like a tuna noodle casserole. But we are using salmon today. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch my view so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right. So before we get started, as always, our first step is to wash our hands. Yep. So again, getting all the surfaces with hot soapy water. You can sing the ABCs or happy birthday twice. And just making sure that our hands are really nice and clean. Another thing we are going to do is go ahead and sanitize our countertops, making sure that those are good and clean as well. And finally, you will notice that all of my ingredients are set up here. This is again called mise en place, which is getting everything in order. This is a really great way to set up your kitchen, especially if you're making a new recipe. That way you have everything out and you don't have to worry about digging through cabinets, and you've got everything ready to go. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the recipe. The first step is to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. So before we forget, let's go ahead and do that.
Yes, very important first step there.
Which, as always, I forget all the time.
You're not the only one.
So the second thing I'm going to have you guys do, if you are cooking along with us today, is to go ahead and start your burner. So we are boiling pasta. So we boil pasta according to package directions. Today we're working with a whole wheat penne. So we're going to start boiling our water right away while we're starting everything.
And I mean, we've talked about whole grains before on this series. You know, with the whole wheat penne, you're getting a lot of extra fiber, a lot of extra vitamins and nutrients, but it can be a challenging switch from regular pasta noodles to a whole wheat. So you can go half and half on that if you're gradually making that change. So just a little tip there.
Absolutely. All right, so hopefully our pasta water will boil in time and we get everything done. So the first thing we're going to start with, all of my vegetables, we're working with just a green onion today. That's our only fresh vegetable. So I have these already rinsed. We're going to go ahead and we're going to finely chop the green onions. So as always, we're making sure that we're holding our knife properly. We're going to go ahead and pinch the blade and then wrap our fingers around. So this is what it should look like if you're working with, you're kind of new to working with knives. Just try to start incorporating this into your knife skills. It's just a really great way to hold your knife. It gives you a little bit more power and a little more control. So, all right, so we're gonna start chopping our green onions. I just took the bottom pieces off. Another great broth bag addition. If you have not seen our latest video, we have added on our YouTube channel how to make broth bags from kitchen scraps. So these would be kitchen scraps that we could use in a broth bag as well.
I'm gonna go ahead and link that video in the chat box here. Yeah, that's a new video, you guys. Check it out. Part of our smart snacking series.
We're just gonna go ahead and go down the line and start cutting these guys. I'm just rocking my knife back and forth on these. And it's really up to you how far you want to go. I usually cut my green onions as far as possible. You know, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people use these tops. I don't like to use them very much, but you sure can. Do you use these tops, Sajwa?
I do. I like to use them.
Yeah. So, I mean, you definitely can. I know Sajwa has told us in the past that you can add your green onions to water and then they'll start growing again.
Yeah, actually, if you keep the bottom part where the white bulb of the green onion is and it has those little roots coming out, all you want to do is soak those roots in a little bit of water, just enough to cover that white part of the green onion, and it'll continue to sprout more green onion from the top. It's a lot of fun, and it's great for kids to kind of see that cool growing that happens there.
Absolutely. Kind of getting your money's worth too as well. Just continue growing yourself some new onions. All right, so I'm just gonna chop these a little bit more. So the more that you chop these onions, we're not gonna wanna chop them too fine, but I'm gonna chop them just kind of a rough chop so I can taste the onion a little bit more in my mixture. All right. Now we can just go ahead, and this is my nice little broth bag that I'll add later, my broth bag scraps. I'm just gonna go ahead and add this to a large bowl. So,
Oh, I love that you've put the paper towel there underneath your cutting board, Jordan.
yeah,
I think that's a really helpful way so when you're cutting, your cutting board isn't slipping and sliding all over the place. An easy,
absolutely.
quick DIY.
Yeah, so I do not have any like slip guards or anything. So all I did was actually wet down some paper towels and put it underneath my cutting board, and it just keeps it in place. If you've ever noticed that your cutting board is kind of moving around on you, just go ahead and do that. It's really easy to do. So next we're going to go ahead and add our canned salmon. So as I said, we're working with a canned salmon today. We're going to go ahead and add that into the bowl where we just added our green onions. So I've got a large bowl here and I'm going to add my canned salmon. And this has been drained. You'll see I have a little moisture in there, but this has been drained. For those of you who have not worked with a canned salmon before, typically these salmon do have bones in them. So you may notice there that there are some bones left from the salmon. You do not need to pick these out. I know it might be a little scary the first time that you're working with them, but they are edible. And they actually add a lot of calcium into your dish. So you can just keep them in there and they will actually just meld with everything.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and keep those bones in there. It may be a little different for you the first time that you're using it, but that's all right. Just give it a try. If you decide that you don't like it, just take them out. I've done that in the past, but adding that extra calcium is a really great way, you know, to get those nutrients that we need.
Yeah, and it really allows you to get the most out of the ingredient. Like we were talking with the green onions, you're getting the most out of that salmon. And it's already a really cost-effective way to add protein, a lean protein into your diet. Then you're adding extra nutrients. I mean, win, win, win.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna quickly add my pasta into my water so I don't forget. And this is something you can start right away with your pasta water. I know that that's going to go nice. So. All right, so we've got our pasta in and that is cooking. The next we're going to go ahead and we are adding some frozen peas to our recipe today. Yep, you guys can see that. This recipe is very easy to double, so if you end up liking it, a lot of the ingredients that you're already buying will have enough to make 2 recipes. The only thing that you would have to buy double of would be a second can of salmon.
Yeah, and I mean, one question I usually get when it comes to using frozen things in a recipe like this, would a canned option work? And my answer to that is yes. I think a canned option would also work if you just happen to have that in your cabinet. I think some canned mixed vegetables would work fine in a recipe like this. That's the fun thing about a casserole is that you're able to kind of mix and match things depending on what you have in your cabinet already.
Absolutely. And you know, if you don't like peas, you can use something different as well. I have a medley on hand that has peas and carrots in it. So, you know, you can substitute that. There's my oven finally.
Yeah, there goes the oven. Yeah, but speaking of the melody, that's exactly what I was thinking of when I was saying that. And when you do something like a melody, you know, we're always saying this, try to eat a rainbow. So when you're doing a melody, you're getting a lot of different colors in there. I could see, you know, cutting up some bell pepper, putting that in there, maybe a little onion, of course, garlic. So all of those things will really add to that recipe and, you know, really make it good.
Absolutely. All right, so we've added our peas in, and then I'm gonna go ahead and we are using a non-fat plain yogurt today in this, which is a really great option. Make it kind of creamy, which is really nice. And you can actually buy this bigger one, and it tends to be a little bit cheaper. And if you like sweetened yogurts, you can add honey and vanilla to it, and then eat that as a snack as well.
Yeah. Yeah, when I do buy the big container of the non-fat plain yogurt, I do like to add any like canned fruits, something like, you know, the diced peaches, things like that, mandarin oranges, and it really just amps that up. It's like, you know, making your own yogurt concoction, and it's a really quick breakfast option too. So keep that in mind if you're, you know, not the best at making breakfast in the morning.
Yeah. Make sure you guys keep an eye out the next couple of weeks. We're going to be posting how to make homemade granola, so that might be a really great option for you as well. All right, so the next thing we're going to add is all of our seasonings. So today I chose to use dill. So we have 2 teaspoons of dill here, and then we have 1/4 teaspoon of both salt and pepper. So at this time, you can really add whatever seasonings you want. If you don't like dill, don't add dill. The recipe calls for parsley, which is a really mild spice, I think. But Sajwa and I were just talking before this, and we were talking about the seasonings we would add to this as well. And we talked about, you know, garlic powder, onion powder, maybe some cayenne would be great here. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and mix this all up.
And you know, with a recipe as simple as this would be a great one to get your children involved with. You know, there's not too much like knife skills going on. You don't have to worry about that. It's really simple and easy to put together. And, you know, it would be a great way to get the children excited about trying new food. Maybe a canned salmon is new for them. Maybe trying the peas might be a little scary at the beginning, but when they see how the food is put together and they're a part of that experience, it makes them a little bit more invested in wanting to try a new recipe.
Absolutely. Let me just stir my pasta really quick. It's going to go over on me, which I see it happening right now.
Well, while Jordan is working back there, and you know, Jordan, come on in and cut me out whenever you need.
Okay.
I just want to take a moment to talk about meal planning. We love to talk about meal planning here with Cooking Matters. It's a great way to reduce your grocery bill. As Jordan mentioned earlier, you know, this recipe would be great for meal planning because a lot of the ingredients already come in bulk, and it would be quite easy to double the recipe if you need, or, you know, modify it to fit the needs of your family. So, these meals are things that this meal like this in particular and others would be good to freeze. And you can use later on in the week if you don't have time to cook. And so it really takes out that excuse of going out to eat for a last minute treat when you've already got the food baked for you. So you can also portion these kind of meals out throughout the week. And that way you'll have enough to eat during each meal. You already have a plan for your lunch, for your dinner, and you don't have to just make one huge batch of salmon pasta bake. You can do other recipes too. And, maybe have two or three, prepare that on a weekend or on a day that you don't have a lot going on, and then portion that out for the week. So those are just some of the meal planning tips that we have. Yeah. How's it going over there, Jordan?
It's going pretty good. Our pasta is ready. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to drain it real quick. And then a really good tip for when you're working with pasta is you're going to go ahead and drain it with your colander, and then you're going to rinse your pasta with like some cool water. This just stops the cooking process, and then it makes sure that your noodles don't stick together. So this is really nice. If you have issues with that, just go ahead and rinse your pasta, and then you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to quickly do that.
That's certainly a tip I needed.
Absolutely. And when you're working with this pasta for this recipe, don't feel like you have to cook it all the way through, because it is going to go in the oven for a little while. So cooking it to what's called al dente, so just like kind of a little hard still, that is fine. So this is a really quick cook on your pasta there.
So I also want to talk about some ways that you can make cooking a little bit quicker during the weeknights, or maybe nights where you don't have as much time as you normally would. And so one of the tips that I like to talk about would be getting organized. Having an organized kitchen where you know where things are located already really trims down on the cooking process. And like we do at the beginning of every Cooking Connected video, mise en place. So we do like to set out our ingredients and have everything together and set so that you can just move forward through the recipe. The other thing we like to do is read a recipe all the way through at least twice, especially if this is a new recipe. That way you can be sure you have all the ingredients you need and all the supplies you need. And then finally, a good thing that we like to do is prep any ingredients in advance. So that means rinsing, chopping, wiping those cans, those kind of things before you start cooking. One way that we also save on time when cooking is we clean up as we go. So I don't know if you've been watching Jordan, but she's making sure to keep her space nice and clean and organized, wiping up any spills as they happen, pre-soaking pots and pans as she uses them. And, if this was a time to get the family involved, you could get your family involved. Having them help you with cleanup is really a great way to bond and make your cleaning up job easier for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, our rule in our house is if whoever cooks, the other person cleans.
Yeah, if you want a plate, you have to participate.
That's right. That is a great rule.
Yeah.
All right, so I have my pasta drained, and I just went ahead and mixed it into the mixture. Now you're going to spread this in a 9 by 9. And I did oil it. I used a spray oil today, but as always, you can use a regular liquid oil. It does tend to be cheaper when you're using a liquid oil. You just have to wipe it with like a paper towel, or you can use your fingers and just quickly oil your pan. All right. Okay. I'm just gonna quickly spread this. This is such an easy recipe to just throw together on a weeknight. I imagine, especially, I know a lot of people like tuna noodle, so this would be a great alternative, and just try something new, those new fish, which have a lot of really great oils that we need in our diet.
Yeah, seafood is really good for your health. And, it's not hard to eat seafood on a budget. I know sometimes it can be like, what? This stuff is going to be really expensive. But that's if you don't know how to shop. So I do have some shopping tips for eating, seafood and choosing some of those options because, like Jordan said, it's great for your health.
Absolutely.
My favorite part, the cheese.
Yes, I'm just gonna add some Parmesan cheese really quick, and I'm just gonna
Yum.
spread that over the top. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and bake this at 400 degrees for about 25 minutes. All of your ingredients have been cooked. We're really just heating up those frozen peas, and then making sure that cheese is melted and kind of melding together all of our flavors.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got everything cooked, but we just want it nice and hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in the oven. Real
Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Jordan. Like she said, this has already been pretty much cooked. We've got our noodles cooked, the canned salmon is pretty much cooked, and we're waiting on those peas. So in this situation, you wouldn't need to temp your dish. But of course, if you're working with those raw fish ingredients, raw seafood, things like that, we always want to make sure to remember to temp our food. Ooh, is that the finished product?
That is our swap
Oh,
out. As per usual, I have a swap out for you guys. So this is what it will look like. This pan, as you can see, is really well loved in my family. But we've got a nice casserole that we can save, and then a nice little portion here. So it turns out really nice. Um, yeah, and like Sajwa was saying, you don't have to break the bank when you're eating seafood. You can use canned options, even frozen options, in those recipes. And just thaw your fillets out in the fridge. So.
yeah. And I do see we have a couple of extra minutes here, so why don't I go ahead and talk about some of those shopping tips really quick? Jordan already alluded to it, but trying some frozen options. Frozen fish fillets can be cheaper, and that's cheaper than buying at the counter. So you're just going to want to make sure you count the number that you need, and then you can take it out, put it in the fridge to thaw overnight, and it's ready to go by dinner time. And then canned options. So canned tuna, salmon, sardines, things like that. They're budget friendly. They go great in things like casseroles, salads, pasta salads. So you just want to make sure that you're comparing those labels and watching your sodium when we're doing that. And try seasoning more with herbs and spices instead of salt when you're working with canned options. And then also another tip is trying whitefish. Whitefish fillets are a lot less pricey. They do have a milder flavor. I know we use like a tilapia with our fish taco recipe, so go check that out if you're looking for another fish option. But it's a great cost-effective way to include that fish into your diet. And so, there are lots of ways that you can get the seafood in, and you really don't have to break your bank. So, with that, I'm looking at this beautiful salmon pasta bake, and my last question is, let's review our My Plate. We need to make sure that we've covered all the components of my plate and maybe figure out what's missing. So, we have our pasta, which would be the grains. We've got the salmon, which would be our protein. We have peas as our vegetable. We have the low-fat plain Greek yogurt as our dairy. So what are we missing?
Looks like we need some fruit.
Fruit, that's it. So if you wanted to do this recipe and you were just looking to complete your My Plate, something you could do is maybe add a little fruit on the side. You could do a fruit for dessert. Maybe if you're having it with lunch and dinner, a fruit option for dessert. I love having frozen grapes or maybe a small smoothie as a snack. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these recipes. Make sure you're hitting all of your My Plate targets.
Absolutely. And I did just want to quickly show you guys a quick tip. All of our ovens are different. So when you're baking your salmon pasta bake, you'll notice that I put the Parmesan cheese right on top. If your oven for some reason is burning that Parmesan cheese, again, just use some aluminum foil and then wrap it over the top. That way your cheese won't burn, because we really do love that cheese. So don't burn it.
Treat your cheese with respect.
Yeah, exactly. So that is our salmon pasta bake.
Yes. Yep, so that's our salmon pasta bake recipe. We just want to thank all of you guys for tuning in for this week's episode of Cooking Connected. And I do want to do a quick reminder about our survey. If you have some extra time, please, please, please take our survey for us and give us some feedback on how we can continue to make these videos better. So make sure that's in view. Our program code for this week's episode of Cooking Connected is going to be E097390. All right, you guys, that's it. We've come to the end of another episode, but don't worry, we'll see you next week with another episode of Cooking Connected. Please check out our Facebook page, like us on Facebook if you want to get more notifications, and don't forget to take our Friday poll this week so we can decide what we're going to be cooking next week. All right, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.